what I'm going to do now is open ChatGPT because the whole session today is going to be me asking questions to ChatGPT about the SpriteKit framework, and hopefully I can learn more about how it works. And I'm going to set a little bit of a goal today. I don't want to pressure myself too much because it kind of depends on how the first part of the session goes. But basically what I want to do is create the asteroid, the ship. So I want to create the little A-shaped ship and put it on the screen. That's all there is to it. That's all I want to do. I know it's a deceivingly simple goal, but I want you to be aware, actually, that I'm timing our session. It's going to be quite a while. About an hour and 25 minutes that I'm going to do this. But here we go. Back to ChatGPT. So I've already started asking questions to ChatGPT about the SpriteKit framework, so I'm just going to explore a little bit where we left off. So, where did I go from? Okay, this is... Let's go to the top. Alright. A little bit of looking. I'm trying to find the point where I asked it, what's the simplest way to make a game? Because I know that I asked it what the simplest way to make a game is. I say it because I don't know ChatGPT's gender. I wonder what it is. No idea. But anyway, where is this prompt? I'm just gonna search. We're gonna say simplest or easiest. All right, we have it. So I asked, what's the easiest way to make a game for iOS? Include technologies, tools, programming languages, frameworks, libraries. I need suggestions. Prioritizing simplicity. I want to reproduce the Asteroids arcade game for iOS. Right, and ChatGPT says, creating a game for iOS, especially a relatively simple one like the Asteroids arcade game, can be achieved using a variety of tools, languages, and frameworks. Here's a suggestion prioritizing simplicity. Number 1, Swift programming language. Use Swift as a programming language. It's the native language for iOS development and is relatively easy to learn, especially for beginners. Okay, so that's kind of obvious. You definitely want to use Swift for iOS development. Pretty much a given. 2, the SpriteKit framework. Take advantage of SpriteKit, Apple's 2D game framework. SpriteKit abstracts away many of the complexities of game development and provides built-in support for common game development tasks like animations, physics, and particle systems. Okay, so SpriteKit is where we want to be. That's the framework that we want to be using. It's got built-in supports, so yeah. I knew this already. We're going to be using SpriteKit. That's the whole purpose of today's session. Would be interesting to further define or see an example of what an animation is, a physics system, and a particle system is. But point 3 is Xcode IDE. Use Xcode as your integrated development environment. It's the official IDE for iOS development and comes with a range of tools to assist in coding, debugging, and testing your game. UI kit for elements optional. For any additional UI elements or menus in your game, you can leverage UI kit, which is another Apple framework. However, for a game like Asteroids, a simple user interface may not be a priority. Okay, so I'm not going to be using UI kit probably, because I'll just use SpriteKit and scenes, I think. GitHub source control. We all know about GitHub source control. It's important to control the intermediate steps in developing your app and all its versions. Graphics and asset creation. I'll probably use GIMP for asset creation, which is a free Photoshop-like tool, and actually mentions right here GIMP. Audio, I can use Audacity for editing audio or find royalties soundtracks online. That's cool. I might, for the audio, whenever an asteroid, like an ass, gets hit, and it explodes into smaller asteroids, I might want to make a farting sound. So that's just me thinking ahead. Point 8, tutorials, learning resources. Take advantage of the many online tutorials and learning resources available for iOS game development. Websites like Ray, Winderlake, Hacking with Swift, and Apple's own documentation are excellent places to start. Alright, and ChatGPT goes on to give us a simplified example. So, up top we have the import statement. We are importing the SpriteKit library. We have a class named GameScene, which is a subclass of SKScene. Looked up what an SKScene was yesterday, but for the sake of this video, we can kind of go through what an SKScene is again. So we have a class named GameScene, which is a subclass of SKScene. We have this didMove method that takes a parameter of type SKView. And inside the didMove method, we are setting up the game scene here. Part of the setup looks to be like we're setting up a constant spaceship, and we are assigning a SpriteKit node to it. We're instantiating a new SpriteKit node. Spaceship.position. So it looks like SpriteKit nodes, or SKSpriteNodes, I should be saying. It's an SKSpriteNode. So it looks like when we create a new SKSpriteNode, it automatically comes with this property called position. So we're tapping into the position by using the dot operator. This is all like rudimentary basic stuff, but I'm just going to think through this for my own sake and for anybody else who needs to think everything through like me. Glad you're here. So in position, we're going to set that to CG point with a value, with an x value of size.width divided by 2. So size, it looks like it's a property of an SKScene, because we're not using the dot operator to access size. Looks like it kind of just exists in an SKScene. So we're accessing this property, kind of just like floating out there. And we're accessing the property again for the y coordinate. And I guess the size property has a width and a height. We're dividing by 2, so that means looks like we're just putting this in the center of the screen. So we're declaring a SKSpriteNode, then declaring its position, or setting its position here, and then here we have the addChild method. So it looks like addChild is just a method we can access out of the blue, like with no trouble. So it looks like it's a method that belongs to SKScene because we just have access to it. And then after this didMove method, we have override func update current time interval. So don't know what that current time interval is, but it looks like it's updating a game loop. I'm thinking like, and this is just speculation, but it sounds like if you just need animations to start over again and over again, like for example, maybe not an animation, but like audio to start over again, or it may be like animation too. So maybe you want like if you have in Asteroids, for example, you have the asteroid, the spaceship inside Asteroid that comes and like shoots stuff at your spaceship. So like the alien spaceship I'm talking about. So we have the alien spaceship that comes by, shoots like little pellets or lasers at your spaceship that might be on the game loop, and every time the loop starts over, we send out a new alien spaceship. So that's just speculating as to what this update method is doing, but I'm just going to go based on that assumption, because if we run into a problem or we want to update it, I will ask about that. Ask about that later when I come to it. But yeah, that's the SKScene. This is the class. Then we have some lines of code down here. The comment says set up your game view. So we're saying let game view equal SKView. Looks like we're setting the frame of it. So that's basically the size or the outline or the borders of the SKView. So the SKView stands for SpriteKit view. So a SpriteKit view, which is, I think it's just like a UI view, like you have in UI kit, but it's SKView is just like the SpriteKit version of a UI view. It probably has some other special properties to it, but I'm guessing that's what it is. I'm going to confirm that later, though. That seems important to know that. So we're setting the size of the SKView, then we have let game scene, and then we're creating a new game scene. So we're instantiating the game scene class, or the game scene object that we declared earlier, and we're passing in size, and we're saying game view dot frame dot size. So the size for the game scene is going to match the size of the game view that we just declared right above that. And I just want to mention this parameter size here and look back up at the class, because in the game scene we actually don't have an initializer or a custom init method that specifies we need to pass in a size. But I'm thinking that SKScene has its own initializer that does accept a size parameter, and that's just kind of, all that is kind of abstracted away, like the init method is abstracted away. So that's what it sounds like. That would be an interesting question to ask. So actually, why not? I'm just going to create a note just for this session. Don't mind my notes. This is all personal stuff. Don't go sharing. So, how do I open this in a new window? Okay, anyway. So we're going to say, first question is, I remember it's, what is an SKView? Next question is, where is the size property declared in SKScene? Declared does it belong to SKScene? Okay, so I actually remember now that I asked this question. So yeah, I do remember that we asked this question. I don't know if this is too small for you, so I'm going to make it bigger. So I don't know if you can see this, but the first question is, what is an SKView? And then second question is, where is the size property declared? Does it belong to SKScene? And further than that, we want to say, is there an init method that requires we specify a size, a value for size? I'm thinking the answer is yes. So those are a few questions I want to ask eventually. And back to where we were, we have the final line of code in the simplified example that ChatGPT has given us. This line of code says GameView.present scene game scene. So I know from yesterday that present scene is something the UI is something an SKView uses to present a scene. So that may seem that may seem obvious, but there's a different thing that game scenes do, or SK scenes do, versus using present scene. So SK scenes have another method to add nodes within them, or to present different screens within them, or scenes within them, and they don't use the present scene method. The present scene method belongs to the SKView type. So just wanted to point that out. But we'll clear that out as we keep going. So ChatGPT goes on to say, this is a very basic example and doesn't include game mechanics or physics, but it gives you a starting point. As you progress, you can add features such as player controls, asteroid spawning, collision detection, and scoring. Remember to consult SpriteKit and Swift documentation for more in-depth details on game development. And then after that, I asked, how recent is your training data? Just because I wanted to see if ChatGPT is feeding me BS. Obviously, I don't think it's real BS, but it's just kind of, ChatGPT can be on a crazy one sometimes. So anyway, ChatGPT says, as of my last update in January 22, training data includes information up until that point. So, yeah, pretty much ChatGPT at the time of this recording. Today, this recording's made on November freaking 15th, 2023. So it's almost ChatGPT's data is almost 2 years old. So anyway, we'll go ahead and move on. The next thing I said after that prompt was explain each line of code in the code snippet you provided. So ChatGPT said, certainly, let's break down the provided Swift code snippet. So it produces the code again, and here are all the lines of code. We said import SpriteKit imports the SpriteKit framework, which is Apple's framework for 2D game development. Class GameScene SKScene defines a Swift class named GameScene that inherits from SKScene, indicating it's a SpriteKit scene. So there's something to take note of. SKScene stands for SpriteKit scene, which may seem obvious, but just wanted to point that out. Point number 3 is override func did move to view SKView. This overrides the did move to method of SKScene, which is called when the scene is presented in a view. So we're overriding the superclasses method. So SKScene has a did move method, and we're overriding that method with a custom implementation. And this did move is called when the scene is presented in a view. So I'm gonna fart, dude. Excuse me. So anyway, which is called when the so this is called when the scene is presented in a view. So so when does this get called? So this would get called in this line of code here, GameView.presentScene GameScene. So when does this execute though? That's my question. Does it execute when do we call it? Like, when does this run? When does this execute? So I can imagine that when the game scene is presented onto the screen, we call did move, and then the SK scene, or the game scene should appear, like, for example, when you very first open the game, you have a game scene coming onto the screen, and then your did move method gets called. But when do we actually call game view? Like, I'm guessing we just put this method, GameView.presentScene, we put that method inside of some sort of interactive element, like a button on the screen, like there's a button on the screen, or like some triggered event, like all the asteroids are gone, for example. Like, all the asteroids are gone, and that triggers some event, like some state change. So we got like something checking the state constantly to see if the asteroids are all gone. And then once that becomes like true, the asteroids are all gone, then we're going to call GameView here. GameView.presentScene. And when we call that, we're going to present, I guess, another instance of game scene, and then we'll call the did move method automatically again. So that's the way I'm thinking it works, which makes sense to me. But we shall see once we get further along in this series. So where were we? Point three, inside this method, you can set up your game scene. So set up your game scene. I know from my work yesterday that setting up game scenes means that you set up these things called nodes in your scene. And what nodes are like individual elements on the screen that the user sees. So these are going to be like buttons and like assets and like whatever little elements that you might see, and all these elements, they're called nodes and they exist inside of an SKScene. And the SKScene is like a container that contains all these nodes. It's kind of just like a circular relationship. I get like the way to define an SKScene is that it has nodes, and the nodes are elements, and what like kind of, I guess it's not a circular definition, but a scene, SKScene is characterized by the fact that it's a container for nodes, and then the nodes are elements, which are the actual individual piece things that you see on the screen. So that's what we're doing when we set up the game scene. So right here where it says inside this method you can set up your game scene, it just basically means to do the initial declaration of the nodes, and also like some other like preliminary setup, like setting the state. Like for example, we could set like some sort of tracker to keep track of how many asteroids there are. Like if we go to a more advanced level in asteroids, say we're on level 10 of asteroids, it might have more asteroids floating around. So in the did move method up here, we can, as part of the setup, we can set the number of asteroids, for example. So that might be like some integer that we set up, and that's like a basic piece of state that we need to set at the beginning. So once the scene is presented to the user, we set up the game scene when we call did move. That'll set the state and the necessary variables, and then that's also going to cause us to declare the nodes, which might be the individual asteroids on the screen, and obviously the spaceship and whatever else you might need, like the alien spaceship or something. So let's move on to the next point. So point 4 is set up your game scene here. A comment indicated that this is where you perform initial setup for your game scene. So we just went over that, so let's go to point 5. So point 5 is let spaceship equal SKSpriteNode image name spaceship. So it says creates an instance of SKSpriteNode named spaceship using an image named SKSpaceship. SKSpriteNode is a node that represents a textured rectangular area. So SKSpriteNode is a node that represents a textured rectangular area. So it looks like it's probably like a almost like a UI view, but it's not the most appropriate analogy because we have SKView, which is most like a UI view, I'm guessing. So SKSpriteNode is just one of those nodes, like the screen elements I was mentioning before, that shows up in a scene. And in this case, this node is a textured rectangular area. So that's what an SKSpriteNode is. And moving on to 6, we have spaceship.position equals CG point with an X value of size.width divided by 2. With a Y value of size.height divided by 2. This sets the position of the spaceship node to the center of the scene. Size refers to the size of the scene. So we had a question earlier about where size was declared, so we definitely want to find that out. So we'll ask that in a bit. But in this case, we know basically what it does. We're setting the size and position. All right, and then we have the next line, which is 7, add child spaceship. Adds the spaceship node as a child of the scene. This is necessary for it to be displayed. So, when we call the add child method and we pass in spaceship, and spaceship was defined here. So we have a spaceship that is a SKSpriteNode, which is a textured rectangular area. Which I'm guessing the textured rectangular area could hold like some kind of asset. That's why they're saying image name. So this textured rectangular area is pretty much like a frame to hold an image. In this case, named spaceship. So we have a textured rectangular area, which is the same as a SpriteKit node or an SKSpriteNode, and we're putting an image in there. And that kind of describes what the spaceship is. And then later we do add child spaceship. So we are adding the spaceship, which is an SKSpriteNode, as we're adding that as a child to the game scene. So like I mentioned before, we're adding nodes to the scene. So yeah, we're adding nodes to the scene. So we're adding the spaceship node to the game scene. So that's exactly what I was saying earlier. Which is, and it makes sense that they're doing it here in the did move method because that's where you set up the scene. So we're adding a node to the scene. That's just an example of that. So that's what we did in 0.7. And my question is, where is add child defined? Is it in SKScene? I'm going to go ahead and add that to our list of questions. I asked this yesterday, but I don't know or don't remember exactly where it was defined. If it was defined in SKScene or if it was a parent even of SKScene. So I'm just going to say, where is add child defined? And we will ask ChatGPT later where add child is defined. Alright, so moving on to the next point, we have 0.8, override func update current time interval. Overrides the update method, which is called on each frame before rendering. In this method, you would typically implement your game's update logic. Okay, so it's good that we went through this process of, asking ChatGPT to explain every line, because I was wrong. I described the update method as, updating a loop, but it sounds like this update method is called on each frame before rendering. So I don't exactly know what a frame is. It might be like an SKSpriteNode. So, which is called on each frame before rendering. So you could say, in this method, you would typically implement your game's logic. So we called each frame before rendering. So I'm sorry, I'm getting distracted. Someone's laughing in the next room. Which is called on this method, which is called on each frame before rendering. So I don't know what a frame is, but apparently before we present it to the user, we're going to call this method. So this might be useful, for example, if a frame happens to be like a sprite node like an asteroid breaks into smaller pieces, we want to render those smaller pieces, and we would update this logic as those smaller pieces are rendered. And that might be, in this case, like the trajectory of the smaller pieces and the speed. So that's what I'm guessing it looks like and it sounds like. Yeah, so that's what it sounds like. And then we have a comment update game loop, a comment indicating that this is where you would put the code for your game's update loop. We have let game view equals SKView frame CG rect, x value 0, y value 0, width 768, height 1024. So we're creating a game view of type game view, which is an SKView. So SKView looks like it has a specified frame size of 1024. It doesn't really explain what SKView is, but again, I'm gonna assume that it is something like a UI view. But that might be a question that I need to ask ChatGPT. What is an SKView? So I'm just gonna write that down right now. So what is an SKView? Oh, I already wrote that down. What am I thinking? All right, so we're on it already. We have that question that we're going to ask. So here we go. Next line of code. Let game scene equals game scene size, game view dot frame dot size. So this creates an instance. This creates an instance of game scene with size equal to the size of game view. So we're creating a game scene, which is an SKScene that fits into an SKView. So we have the SKView, then we have the game scene, then inside the game scene we have the SKSpriteNode. So that's the way it's going. And then last line of code, we have GameView.presentScene GameScene. Presents GameScene with the game view, making it visible. This code snippet sets up a simple SpriteKit scene with a spaceship image at the center. For a complete game, you would further extend this code by adding player controls, game mechanics, and other necessary elements. So that's basically where we want it to be. That's actually the exact goal that I wanted to achieve tonight, is to present a spaceship on the screen. So let's get our hands dirty and try to create this spaceship. So for now, I'm just gonna find a random spaceship image. Actually, you know what? I'm thinking I want asses to float around that we can shoot at. But the spaceship should be like a gloved hand, and it shoots out fingers, like kind of like a prostate exam. Like the hand would be like spinning around. Like we would spin the hand around and fly it around the screen, and we would shoot out the fingers, and it would hit the asses that are flying around the screen. And so we can kind of like get this whole vibe of these asses are like being destroyed by these fingers, and it's kind of like a prostate exam. God, I can't think. But that might make it to the point where I'm not able to submit it to the App Store. So I did a little research. You can't actually have butts as like a main thing. You can have a butt in the App Store because there's a game called Butts in Space, and it's straight up about butts having an adventure and whatever. You play as a butt and you talk to other butts. But you can have butts. I just don't think it's that suggestive as a as a as a god as a prostate exam. I keep forgetting the word prostate exam, but yeah, I don't think it's the butts in space are that suggestive. So maybe I need to find something else, um, different, like something else besides a prostate exam glove. So, what can we do? What are we destroying our butts with? Maybe, maybe, so I'm thinking, what if we still have a hand? We have like a hand, or maybe we have a spaceship. We just straight up have a spaceship, but it shoots rolls of toilet paper at the butts. Like we have a spaceship like flying around, and it's like, like an A-shaped spaceship, but at the tip of it we have these rolls of toilet paper that are coming out and destroying the butts. I think we'll do that. So a spaceship that shoots toilet paper. So I guess we can use any spaceship right now. Eventually, I want to design my own spaceship, or get someone to make it for me on Fiverr or something. But right now, I'm just gonna look up a spaceship. So here we go. Spaceship image asset iOS. Spaceship. Okay, that's not what we want. Okay, we found some 2D spaceships. This seems cool. Can I buy these? They are $6. I need to buy these for $6. I'm not gonna buy them for $6. I want free assets. Where do we look for free spaceship image assets? I'll just type in free. Spaceship icons. Maybe that's where we want to look. Icon scout. And we got a bunch of spaceships. So I'm looking for something that looks a little more like the Assteroids arcade game spaceship. This is a weird spaceship, but maybe what really stands out to me? I think we're gonna choose. There might be more. Spaceship. Ugh. All right. I think this spaceship looks fine. So, what? So I need an Icon Scout subscription, it looks like. I just need a spaceship, please. Actually, there might be an a spaceship in the Apple library, SF Symbols Beta. So we have SF Symbols Beta, which is a library provided by Apple. We have a bunch of image assets. So here we have objects, tools, device, transportation, airplane. We have an airplane. Airplane, commerce, time, health, shapes, errors, indices, math, human, spaceship. Uh, Actually, there's a paper plane. What? So we have this plane. We have this paper plane. I think I like that, actually. Maybe this one right here. Kind of looks like it has a force field. Or this one. Kind of looks like it has a force field. That's the... I think we go more classic. Yeah, this is... Or maybe even this one. I'm thinking too hard on this. So let's get this image asset. I totally forgot how to do this. How do we get this? How do we get this? Do we copy it? I'm gonna try to drag it over to assets. I totally forgot how to do this, so we're gonna say how to use SF symbols. SF symbols in SF symbols. Over 5,000 symbols, SF symbols. How do you use it? How do you use it? How do you use it? Interface guidelines, SF symbols. How do you use it? The complete guide for SF symbols. How to load an SF symbol. So we have Swift UI. So how do we do it in UIKit? How do we use an SF symbol in UIKit? Let's just look it up. Let's just Control find, Control F. So UIKit. In UIKit, you need to use UI image, then place it in a UI image. UI image. Okay, so that's not exactly what we want. So the code that ChatGPT So just a review. This code that ChatGPT gave us assumes that we have an image named spaceship in our assets. But to use SF symbols, we actually don't have the SF symbols as assets. We just straight up access them to their Xcode just by naming them. Which may work actually. You can say SpriteKit node, image named. Yeah, we may be able to just put the name of the SF symbol here. So I'm gonna see if I can just find the name of this SF symbol. Paper plane. Okay, so the name of this SF symbol is paper plane. So can I just say system name? Can I just say system name here? Like, can I use the label system name instead of using image named? I guess there's only one way to find out. So I'm copying this code. And I already have this all set up. I don't want to break too much of this. I have a lot of code here. Seems useful. You got touches begin, touches move, touches ended, so all this functionality there. Touch up, touch moved, touch down, spinning node. It seems like really useful. All I want to do is just add the label or add the image. So we can just copy this, I guess. So I'm going to copy this, and then I am going to. Okay, we don't have a did move method. Do we have a did move? Why is there no did move method? Are we supposed to have a did move method? Oh, according to freaking ChatGPT, we're supposed to. Scene did load. Okay, I'm guessing scene did load just gets called when the scene gets load. And I see here there's a label. That has a child node. That has a child node with name hello label. So okay, so I think I get this. So on the game scene, we're gonna remove this label, and then we're going to insert a image. That's my alarm. So we have a bunch of nodes here. I want to see if there's just an image. Animate with textures action. So maybe color sprite is what we want. Maybe this is what we want. So we just have an empty freaking thing. So we have this empty SK node. Why is the parent hello label? We're gonna say that's not the parent. I think it has to have a parent. So I think the parent should be scene or game scene. Why is the parent hello label? Game scene. Game scene. Game scene. So we don't want the label. We don't want the label. We want an empty. We want to just upload an image. We want to upload. Okay, so image name SpriteKit. Okay, I guess we don't have to. I guess we'll just do this. So we will just leave the label code there. And I'm just going to paste this here. SK spaceship, SKSpriteNode, image named. And we're gonna go paper. We're gonna go system dot paper plane. System name. UI image system name paper plane. Is that how we do it? Is that how we do it? And what is this one? Cannot convert UI image to expected argument type string. So paper plane, is that what we do? That's what it was called. Yeah, paper plane, paper plane. Paper plane, paper plane. Why won't they give us an answer on how to freaking get this into the freaking project? SF symbols should be the simplest thing. Okay, so it's called paper plane. I spelled it right? Yes, I spelled it right. Alright, so let spaceship equals SKSpriteNode, spaceship position, CD point, Okay, let's run the app. See if we get a spaceship on the screen. Build succeeded. That's good. Come on, paper plane. Paper plane. Come on. Okay, now paper plane. Okay, that one didn't work. So my question to ChatGPT is going to be, how to put an SF symbol inside of an SKSpriteNode. How do you put an SF symbol into a SKSpriteNode? To use an SF symbol in an SKSpriteNode in SpriteKit, you can follow these general steps. Create an SKTexture from the SF symbol. Use the UI image system name initializer to create a UI image from the system SF symbol. Convert the UI image to an SKTexture using SKTexture image initializer. Create an SKSpriteNode with the SKTexture. Use the SKSpriteNode texture initializer to create a sprite node with the SKTexture. Okay. What the hell does that mean? I don't know what an SKTexture is, but obviously we have to create one from the SF symbol. Here we're using UI kits to make we're using the UI kit UI image from the SF symbol, convert the UI image to an SKTexture, and then we can convert that to an SKTexture using the SKTexture image initializer. Use the SpriteKit node texture initializer to create a sprite node with SKTexture. Okay, so we're making a UI image by passing in the system name of the SF symbol. So in our case, that would be paper plane. And we're converting that image into an SKTexture using the SKTexture initializer. So SKTexture accepts a UI image when it's initialized, and then we pass in the SKTexture to SKSpriteKit node to basically put the freaking image inside the sprite node. So here's some example code. If let symbol image name UI image system star, let textures image symbol image, let sprite node SKSpriteNode texture sprite node position CG point, your scene add child sprite node. Okay, so I guess we can just copy this whole thing. And we change this up to game scene. We're adding self.addChild, SpriteNode. Instead of star, we're doing paper plane. So that's what we just did. Easy enough. Did we import UI kit though? I think we need to import UI kit. Well, actually, let's run it. See if we get the error. See if it wants UI kit. It says killed. Whoops. Oh, there we go. If you look very carefully. What the heck is going on? Oh, what? The game does this? Alright, if you look inside of this, there's a paper plane there. You see that? Paper plane. There's a paper plane. So, we somewhat succeeded. I want to make it bigger and centered. So, position. So, what is the position? How do we set this? So, that's... so it was to the right a little too far, so I'm going to bring it back to about 75, and then the Y is going to be about 150. Let's see how that goes. Run again. Oh, what the hell? That's kind of better. So let's set the position to 50. And we'll put the Y at 250. And we'll run again. Alright, it's not what we want. I think we're going higher and higher, so I think Y needs to be 50. And X needs to be about 35. Let's go. There we go. Okay, I'm setting Y to 40 and then X to 25. Alright, I'm just gonna do this. Size dot width divided by 2 and size dot height divided by 2. Easy. Now it should be smack dab in the middle. What the fuck? Where'd it go? What? Why did it disappear? What? I mean, self.size? Self.size. Where'd it go? The hell? What the hell? Oh. I'm doing this wrong. Okay. So I was setting the size property. I was setting the x coordinate in reference to the SKTexture, I believe. Yeah. No, I was manipulating the right thing. So, okay, we can just forget about this right here. I don't know why this isn't working though. So we can say self.size.height. Is it anywhere on the screen? Is it like in the corner or something? This is so weird. Okay, we'll hard code it again. So we'll say 20. And this is going to be 40. I wish there was a better way to do this. And we'll run it away. Run it again. That's close to the center. Why isn't the size... Why isn't the positioning working? When I access size, what size am I accessing? I'm accessing the size of game scene, right? CG point. X position. Y position. Oh, I didn't even set this correctly. This should be 40. God, why is the size property not working? I guess that's something we could ask ChatGPT. So I'm just going to type... So I'm just going to copy this line of code into a comment. And we're going to go self.size.height divided by 2. And we're going to go self dot width dot self dot size dot width divided by 2. And then I'm going to paste it into ChatGPT. And we're going to say why does this code make my asset, my node, my sprite node disappear. The code you provided sets the position sprite node to the center of the screen. If the sprite disappeared, there are a few potential reasons to consider. Node outside scene bounds. If the size of your sprite or the anchor point is such that the entire sprite is outside the visible bounds of the screen, it won't be rendered. Check the size and anchor point of your sprite to ensure it's within the visible area. So what does that mean? The size of your sprite. Okay, so the sprite is the sprite node. Is outside the visible bounds of the scene, it won't be rendered. Check the size and anchor point of your sprite to ensure it's within the visible area. So what is the anchor point? How do I know it's outside the visible bounds of the scene? That's one question. Okay, incorrect anchor point. The default anchor point for an SKSpriteNode is 0.5, which corresponds to the center of the sprite. If you've changed the anchor point, it can affect how the position is interpreted. Ensure that your anchor point is set up appropriately, especially if you've modified it elsewhere in your code. Parent-child relationships. Ensure that the sprite node is actually added as a child to the scene self. If it's not a child of the scene, it won't be rendered. Confirm that you've called add child sprite node somewhere in your code. So we've called add child sprite node. Okay. Scene size. Verify the size property of your scene self-size correctly. Set the size you expect. If the scene size is too small, the center position might be outside the visible area. How do we check this size? Okay. What is the size? Do we have size anywhere on here? Create shape node to use during mouse interaction. Okay. So we're checking of the size of the freaking scene. So what is the size of the scene? Okay, so I'm just going to print the size of the scene. So we're going to say print self.size. And we're going to press run. Hopefully that prints to our console. And let's see what this says. So this is the size of the scene, which is how many pixels an iPhone 15 Pro has. So I'm just gonna print self.size.width and print self.size.height. See what we get. Should correspond to the freaking numbers we just got. Yeah. Okay, so I'm gonna divide these by 2. Okay, let's check the debugger. Okay, so we have it successfully dividing. obviously. Or now we know for sure it's dividing. So what do we do here? Why is the size property not working? So what are the other reasons? So the scene isn't too small. Okay, we've called add child. The scene is not too small. Incorrect anchor point. Default anchor point for a sprite is 0.5.5, which corresponds to the center of the sprite. Ensure that your anchor point is set appropriately, especially if you've modified it elsewhere in your code. So, how do we access the anchor point? So how do we ensure that the anchor point is at the default? The default anchor point for an SKSpriteNode is 0.5.5, which corresponds to the center of the sprite. If you haven't explicitly changed the anchor point in your code, it should be at the default. However, if you want to ensure that the anchor point is explicitly set to the default value, you can do so like this. SpriteNode anchor point, CG point. Okay. Okay, so let's just copy this. SpriteNode position. You can paste that right here. And then see if that changed anything. So we're going to run this again. It should be at the same place. Yeah, it's at the same place. And then we'll try to use self.size.width divided by 2, and then we'll use self.size.height divided by 2, and then we'll run again. Okay, it's not showing up anymore, so it wasn't the anchor point. Okay, node outside scene bounds. The size of your sprite or the anchor point such that the entire sprite is outside the visible bounds of the scene. It won't be rendered. The size of your sprite or the anchor point such that the entire sprite is outside the visible bounds of the scene, it won't be rendered. Well, that makes sense. Check the size and anchor point of your sprite to ensure it's within the visible area. So the size. What is the size? What is the size here? So what if we said SpriteNode dot size equals, how do we set the size? CG size width height. We're going to say CG Can you just say 100? Oh, CG float. CG float. So we're going to say 100.0 CG float was 100.0. Okay, that might work. So let's save the project and we'll just run it again. Okay, that's still not working. What is going on here? At least it's not crashing. Okay. If the issue persists, you may want to check other parts of your code that interact with the sprite, such as physics, settings, animations, or potential remover of the sprite elsewhere in your code. Okay, so I'm running out of time. Let's just get the code back to a point where it was at least presenting something on the screen. So we're gonna say, where was it? We're gonna say x is equal to 20 and y was equal to 40, and we're just gonna run it. And see what shows up on the screen. Alright, so there we go. We got the freaking spaceship on the screen. Oops, that's my timer. We got the spaceship on the screen. It's not exactly centered like I want it to, which is kind of annoying. But at least I got it onto the screen. We will revisit later. So I'm just going to save this, and then I'm going to commit and push. So we'll say creates spaceship image and display on screen, and we are going to stage all and commit, and we're also going to push. So let's push yes, origin main. Alright, so let's check if I have a contribution today. Alright, so we have a contribution today, November 15th. It's November 15th. So that was my coding session today. So I appreciate you tuning in. You're probably like the only person who's ever watched this. I am just going to continue tomorrow. So, yeah, thanks for tuning in. Come back for more asteroids later. Okay, bye.